49ers fans, Patrick Mahomes has been working out with Trey Lance out in Texas. Is he turning him into an elite quarterback? It looks good when you watch the film. We're going to get into that and much more on tonight's 49ers Roundtable. Everybody, it is Thursday night. That means it is another 49ers Roundtable. And tonight we have a special group. This is going to be a lot of fun. I got a chance to join these folks about a month or so ago on their channel. So I said, hey, let's all get together. We'll get everybody together. We'll do another one over here. So it is time for the 49ers Roundtable with the East Coast Red and Gold podcast. And joining me from that group is Niners Jess. Down in the corner there is Becca, your girl Beck. I don't want to put you in the corner, but that's where you are. I apologize. And then right below me we got Maddie B. How are y'all doing tonight?
Awesome. Jack,
luckily her name is not Baby, so no one will get mad about it. It's fine.
There we go.
After last night, I should be in the corner.
Right.
I missed the fun last night. I caught a little bit of it from what you guys were telling me before we went on air. But, hey, this is a perfect time of the year for the 49ers, right? You've got Trey Lance highlight videos coming out almost on an everyday basis. So that's been exciting for 49ers fans. Trey Lance is awesome. He's like an off-season content machine. He joined the 49ers in 2021, and he's one of those guys where his team has always done a good job of making sure his workout videos are out there for the public to consume, and this season's been no different. Looking at it from where I am, it's very interesting. I see some interesting things with the footwork and those types of things that are going on. We definitely know the positive here is that he's working, and the big positive is that he's working with Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes, a two-time MVP of the league. He's been a Super Bowl MVP, two-time Super Bowl winner, all those things. So when it gets to working with different players, having Trey Lance working with Patrick Mahomes doesn't really get any better than that. So I just wanted to go ahead and ask you, Jess, what is your thoughts on Trey Lance working out with Patrick Mahomes and from what you've seen so far of him working out down there in Texas?
Well, Jack, it just shows that he just, he wants to learn, he wants to develop more of his game. As far as, the videos, I mean, does it show that his throw is tightened up a little bit? Maybe. But you know what, like when we get into game speed and everything else, I think that'll show much more. But the guy's working. I mean, he's working with probably one of the best in the game right now. So you can't fault him for that. And, and I commend him for that. Like, Trey's being that guy and he knows he has to compete for that quarterback job. And, we'll see what happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you think, Becca?
I would agree with Jess. I think, he's going to be hungry. He knows he's got a lot of competition coming his way for the starting job this season. And I think he's setting himself up well to be working out with someone like Patrick Mahomes. And if he can take away anything that helps him improve, then good. That's a plus for us. That's a plus for him, no matter what shakes out in the quarterback situation we have.
Absolutely. How about you, Maddie?
I think in a perfect world, that's what everybody was hoping they were getting in Trey Lance, right? That's why they traded away 3 first-round picks to get him, for the right to choose him after evaluating multiple quarterbacks and deciding that he was the guy that they were going to go with. So to me, kind of in that case, like that's the guy you want him learning from. Just like you wanted guys training with Jerry Rice back in the day, right? Like you want this guy training with Patrick Mahomes. Sounds like a good plan to me, right? Shout out for it. And I'm glad that he's getting content creators some work, some video editors. They're all getting some work on some things. So it's great, Reggie Jackson is Mr. October. Trey Lance can be Mr. Offseason. It's all good, I love it.
Well, that's really interesting because that's something that I haven't heard before, and that is something that I haven't thought about. Now, like I'm not one who's been overly excited about Trey Lance's offseason workout. Just I don't see a whole lot of difference with his throwing motion or any of those types of things. When you compare him throwing out in Texas now to what he looked like during his pro day, you don't see a whole lot of difference. The only thing that I notice that's different is where he's holding the ball as he draws back. And so it seems to be a little bit lower, but he still brings it up to about that same point. And the rest, his throwing motion, the majority of his throwing motion is exactly the same as what it's always been. And that's not a bad thing. But what you said, Maddie, was interesting because that's a really good point. You know, he's out there working with Patrick Mahomes, the best that there is in the game right now. And back in the 80s, early 90s, everybody on the 49ers wanted to work out with Jerry Rice and go run that mountain, right? Run that hill, see who can make
Run the
it
hill.
to the top. And absolutely, half those guys couldn't make it, but you know, whatever. He was pushing people on the team. And so to go out there and work with Patrick Mahomes, that can't be a bad thing for Trey Lance. So that's from that perspective, it's a big time positive. So yeah, it's a good thing there. I just don't see, again, I don't see a lot of change in his throwing motion, but that's not fine Trey Lance anyway. His throwing motion is what his throwing motion is. You listen to these quarterback coaches. I had the good fortune of having Coach McAvoy, who was one of the quarterback coaches that worked with him prior to the draft. I had a chance to chat with him on the Hammer and Nail show back before the draft about quarterbacks and how they teach them. And one of the things that he said is it's not about changing the motion. You want the guy to be as comfortable as he can. What it's about is getting the motion to be repeatable, making it so that everything just flows. And that's really, I think if we're looking for something to come out of this for Trey Lance, it's the reason he's in the situation right now is because he hasn't been consistent. He hasn't been able to repeatedly put the ball where it's supposed to go. And so that's what the 49ers are hoping, and that's what Trey Lance needs to show. So all the work that he's doing now, that's great. I don't want to knock him for doing the work. We're gonna have to see it come out, right? And what I'll say is this: like, there's so many people saying, "Oh, he needs to do this, he needs to do that. His throwing, his arm's too low, his arm's too high, his front leg is too stiff, his front leg is bent too much." All these things. When in reality, it's like golf, right? So when you watch golf, the guys that hit it the best are the ones that are most consistent, getting that club face closed just the right time to get the ball to go where it's supposed to go. So like think of it this way: like, you've all seen Happy Gilmore, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm dating myself a little bit here. Happy Gilmore, he had the funkiest looking swing. That was part of the whole funny joke of the movie, right? Was how goofy he looked when he hit the ball. But the fact was, it didn't matter anything what he was doing, because when he got to the point where the club was hitting the ball, it was going where it was supposed to go because it was consistent. And it's the same thing with a quarterback in the NFL or even a field goal kicker. It's about being consistent, able to put the ball and do what you want to do with it every time. So that's the positive here right now that I see with Trey Lance. Is he's working on that. Is he going to be able to be the guy? We're going to find that out. It's going to come up, I think, as the season goes, as we get into OTAs and mini camp and training camp. That's when we're going to find out.
And you know what, too, Jack, if I may, if you look at Patrick Mahomes' throwing motion, his doesn't look very tight either. I mean, if anything, I feel like his is a bit lower than Trey Lance's throwing motion.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that, it's about the ability to just, the biggest thing, and Jeff Christensen, who's working with Lance, talked about this in a tweet. There was, I don't know if you guys saw it, but another beat writer, shortly after the initial video dropped, put a side-by-side comparison between Lance during training camp and Lance the other, just recently, saying how the motion looked like it was tighter and all these kind of things. And Jeff Christensen said, no, that's not what this is about. This is about him being more consistent with his legs and the extension, which is, when he says extension, he's talking about the finish of the throw, getting the hand out in front, so he's not like whipping it here, where he's extending his arm and being consistent with that release point. And that's what they're working on. And if he can get those things down, we might see a guy who all of a sudden takes a jump.
Baseball pitches, not darts, right?
I was going to bring up the Nestor Cortez windup in terms of all of the pre-pitch motion stuff he does with kicking the leg, and and somehow the muscle memory kicks in and it goes where it needs to be. So hopefully,
Yeah, that's
Trey Lance.
Yeah, that's even a better, that's another one. Like I use Happy Gilmore because everybody gets it and it's kind of funny. But yeah, baseball pitchers, you see the baseball pitchers, they do all kinds of different stuff. Like, well, you guys are on the East Coast, but the Giants had a pitcher out here recently, just a few years ago, and he'd do a different windup all the time, depending on different things and kind of mess around with the hitters. But he was very consistent because it didn't matter what he did before he actually started his motion, because the actual motion of his arm was the same every time. So I am interested in it. I'm looking forward to seeing what Trey Lance looks like when he shows up here in Santa Clara. We get a chance to see him mid-May. That'll be our first look at him live. I'm looking forward to seeing what he is, because the potential is there. This is a guy who has all the potential in the world, right? There's no doubt that he has the potential. You stack him up next to Brock Purdy and everybody else, and it's clear that he has more potential because he's bigger and stronger and faster.
There's more physical talent from head to toe, right? Like if you take their physical talent and put it in a cup, Trey Lance's is going to be a bigger cup of physical talent, right? He's just blessed with it. You can just tell that guy. He walks into the room and it's like, you play sports, don't you? Right? Like that's just how it is when you see it. And he's just got that swag about him. He has it. That's the thing. We can see it. We can see it emanating from him. Yeah. So I 100% agree. We need to see it. We need to be able to see it. We need to be able to see it for consistent periods. We need to be able to see it not in a monsoon, right? We need to be able to see it, past one drive and a broken leg. That's what we need to see. Right. The guy that I continue to favorably compare him to, because they both came from same level of college, and the only difference was one guy got to play a lot more in college, but it was year 3 before they really started to use him, was Steve McNair. Very similar guys, also very interesting throwing motions. McNair did a lot of things with his legs in the first couple of years as well, and he had his tough time staying healthy for a little bit there too, and he ended up just being a tough guy and getting through some things pretty much for the rest of his career. So if Trey Lance ends up being another Steve McNair for this franchise, another Steve McNair, I think this franchise is going to be pretty happy with their investment, right? You just don't want to see him go do that somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's for sure. And Steve McNair, I remember him. I remember watching him at Alcorn State, and then I remember like what you're talking about. And by the time he figured it out in the NFL, it was special. It was fun to watch. His performance the year that Tennessee went to the Super Bowl and almost pulling that thing out was really nice. So we'll see. And real quick, I'm going to pull this comment up that Lee points out. He says, Jack, let me see if it shows up. Jack at North Dakota. And he's right, because at the time when he was at North Dakota, there was a dip in his throwing motion where when you watched him hit his back foot, his hips would sink and then he would throw. And what I'll say about that is this is something that I've seen brought up recently as well. That dip in his throwing motion was gone by the time they got him to his pro day. When you watch his pro day workout, there's no dip in his throwing motion. It's 1, 2, 3, hit his back foot and throw, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hit his back foot and throw. Whatever you want to say, even if it was a little bit deeper throw, it was gone. And just to show you, I'm just going to pull this up real quick. I showed you guys earlier before we went on the stream, but I'll pull it up. I'll add it to the stream just really quick. I just want to see if I can get this to work. So this is some throwing from Lance. If I can get my thing to time out here. So we're going to look. This is the first throw from the other day. And watch here. There's no dip in his throw. Hits his back foot, plants and throws. It's just really smooth. And it's the same whether you look at it from what he just did in Texas, this first one, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hits his back foot, release, or when he does the from his, there had been a dip, got that cleared up, and did a really, and like I said, when you watch these two videos side by side, the only difference is the ball starts out a little bit more down by his hip, and then it comes up to his shoulder and throws. Whereas in his pro day, it's already up here by his shoulders, and they had him holding the ball up here. So there was just a little slight changes, and we'll see how it works out for Trey Lance. I hope the best for him. It's going to be a lot of fun. I look forward to the competition, I think, more than anything, because competition brings out the best. All right. So
there's forever,
I think I talked you all
there's
off
forever
on that
quarterback competition with the 49ers. So
The
forever.
comment section's funny.
Hey, that's
Yeah, that if there's one thing about this regime, they love competition. You know, so no matter what position, everybody's competing. You know, and that's just the nature of the game. You know, in every sport, not just football, you compete. And you know, like I know people like rant and rave about like, oh my God, like Trey has to compete, Brock has to compete. But it's the nature of the game. Like everybody competes for their role on the team.
absolutely.
You know, going back.
Go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say, you know, going back, this franchise has always had some sort of quarterback controversy going on. It's either the guy that's playing and the guy that's next. Like it went all the way back to Frankie Albert and Y.A. Tittle. It has never stopped. Like it's not like they've just had a bunch of sloppy years going together. It's literally they just go from one quarterback handoff to another quarterback handoff. Albert to Tittle to Brody to Spurrier, back to Brody because Spurrier couldn't handle it. Then to Plunkett, then to DeBerg, then Montana and Young, and that whole thing, right? It just there was always something. Then Smith and Kaepernick, and then like Jimmy and Trey, now Trey and Brock. It's never ending. It's never going to stop. It's just what we have here. That's
now your
just,
hot
that's
take
it.
from last night was Sam Darnold.
Right?
And that's the perfect segue, Beck. I appreciate it. See, that's great because good thing we have her on here because she's helping just turn me right into the next topic. Because Frank Gore yesterday was at the 49ers local pro day. I had the good pleasure of being able to be there, check it out up close and personal. It was fun. I actually got to be on the field, Levi Stadium during it, the workout, which was fun. I get to go on the field anyway, like during pregame on game days and stuff, but to be able to stay out there and watch the guys work out through the whole thing and be able to be wherever I wanted to be was cool. So, but Frank Gore was there and he spoke with reporters afterwards. And, you know, he spent time in New York. He was a New York Jet for a while. And his comment to everybody was, you watch, Sam Darnold will surprise you when you see him on the field during OTAs and training camp. He will surprise you. And I just wanted to get the group's thoughts on Frank Gore, somebody that 49er fans respect pretty much universally, saying that Sam Darnold is going to be somebody to watch. We'll start off with Beck on this one.
Well, I mean, I think we've seen what Brian Griese's done, working with the quarterback group. And I think, Sam Darnold is probably a good example of someone that he may be able to bring in and make some strides with. We talked about it a little bit last night, and Matt mostly brought it up that Sam could be a fierce competitor in the quarterback situation. So it's not out of the question. It's going to be an interesting, I think, thing to watch. Y'all tripping. I love it.
For sure. No, I think it's going to be fascinating. I'll let Maddie go ahead. What do you think? It sounds like you were causing trouble last night.
Well, I mean, you know me. That's what I do. I just look at things fairly and just throw things out there levelly, and we'll see what happens. You're level-headed in this society. People kind of look at you funny, but I look at it like this. If you look at all the numbers that Sam Darnold has had, you look at all the regimes that Sam Darnold has had, the only time that he was really positive and really playing well was last year with Carolina, because they actually kind of built the offense. The offense was kind of constructed to get him through the rest of the season, basically, is what it seemed like. But you actually saw some of his physical traits there. You actually saw him get some stuff done. But he has never had a staff internally in place like the 49ers have to get the most out of the quarterback position, right? It's not only what they do with the offensive linemen. It's not only what they do with the defensive line. It's also what they do with the quarterbacks. Some of the guys they've gotten ready to play, like, yeah, they haven't found the guy, but they've gotten quality starts out of Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard. They almost turned Jimmy Garoppolo into a Super Bowl winner, right? So however you are on the Jimmy Garoppolo fence, he was a couple minutes away from winning the Super Bowl, right? And then you can look at the stuff they've done with Trey Lance. You can look at the stuff that they did to get Brock Purdy ready. You can look at all of it, really, and trust that this is probably going to be his best chance to shine. They've also scouted him since 2018. So my guess is they've had some sort of interest in him during that time frame. So if they had some sort of interest in him, that means that they probably had some stuff cooked up for him, right? They've seen him play down at USC. Those USC teams at that time weren't loaded. So he was carrying some of that as well. He's used to carrying the load for a lot of teams. For the 49ers, he doesn't have to do that, right? Well, he's got some Jim Plunkett potential to me. Like a guy that just gets beat around early, finds a place to kind of squirrel away, and then when he gets his opportunity, he shows up. Everybody's like, "Oh wow, that's why they took him 3rd overall." Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, it's weird. It's almost like if you give a guy a chance, he's going to do well. Would it shock me? No, not at all. He's got the physical talent to do it, and he'll be in the place to do it. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Jess?
If anyone is going to resurrect Sam Darnold's career, it's going to be Kyle Shanahan. Hands down. I mean, say what you want about Kyle Shanahan and everything that's transpired. When he has a quarterback, when he has an offense, it's lights out. So I wouldn't be surprised if, Sam Darnold, comes out, guns a-blazing and everything, because you know what, that props to Kyle Shanahan, props to Brian Greasy.
QB Jesus.
Yeah, and I agree. They really should. This is a spot where if he's going to succeed, it's going to be here, right? You look at what he's done since he got in the NFL or where he's been around, and this is kind of what Gore was getting at is in New York when they were together in New York, that was just a dumpster fire. Adam Gase is awful, and there's a reason he's where he is now, and that's not coaching the NFL, and. He got down to Carolina. I know he played a little bit there with Christian McCaffrey, but again, they had Joe Brady and Matt Rule calling the offense, and neither one of those guys is out at the NFL now, and the other one's no longer calling plays in the NFL. So you kind of look at who he's played with in terms of play callers, and it's easy to see that he's in the best situation he's been in terms of coaching. He's in the best situation he's been in terms of the athletes around him, and it's very similar to somebody that we've seen in San Francisco before, and that's Alex Smith, right? Alex Smith went through the dog days of 49er, just hit the rock bottom, and then awful coaching under Mike
Nolan, Singletary.
Yeah, Nolan and Singletary, just awful.
Yeah.
And then finally, you have Jim Harbaugh come in and kind of resurrect him for a year and a half and gets him to a point where he's able to then go on to Kansas City and win a bunch of games. So I don't know if Sam Darnold's going to step in and become the greatest, but I think that it's going to be a lot of fun to watch Darnold and Lance compete because there's a lot of similarities between these two guys. They both have, when you watch them on film in college, like their college days and even some of their NFL stuff, you see flashes of greatness, flashes of a really good quarterback. And we'll see what happens from there. I'm not sure where it's going to go with Sam Darnold, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with him. It'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to OTAs and seeing how that works out. And I see a lot of people over in the comment section are asking about or talking about Brock Purdy as well. And so let's just wrap this whole thing up when it comes to the quarterback conversation. Can the 49ers win the Super Bowl with this group of quarterbacks that they have? Can one of these guys help lead the 49ers to a Super Bowl? We'll start this time off with Maddie.
Yes. I mean, they should have won it last year, right? At the end of the day, outside of freak ridiculousness happening in Philadelphia, odds are they win that football game. I feel pretty confident they could have won the next game as well, right? I felt confident with Brock Purdy at quarterback. I'd say the record that he had spoke for itself. The way he played spoke for itself. He had some moments where some plays got called back because of penalties or he had some picks get dropped. So he definitely made his fair share of mistakes, but he bounced back pretty good and he had a really good feel for the game. He seemed to know when to get out. He was Kenny Rogers in The Gambler. He knew when to hold them, when to fold them, when to walk away, know when to run. Like he really seemed to just know what he was doing. Like he'd been doing this for a very long time, almost like he'd played high-level college football for 4 years. So that to me was really the difference, and it showed. And I think they would have won the Super Bowl last year. So yeah, if he's healthy, if he's as healthy as he was last year, or his arm's in good shape, sure, absolutely.
Yeah. How about you, Jess? What do you think? 49ers have the quarterback to get to the Super Bowl?
I believe we do. I believe we have two quarterbacks, one Trey Lance and two Brock Purdy. Not necessarily in that order, but I believe that we have two quarterbacks on the roster that will get us to the Super Bowl and win it. And what Maddie said is true. We should have won it last year. But it is what it is. We move on. But yeah, I definitely think that, we definitely do have those quarterbacks. For sure.
Yeah. What do you think, Becca?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we had someone Sam Darnold-esque last year too, rather than Josh Johnson coming in off the bench, we stood a much better chance of holding our own against Philadelphia rather than watching that just disaster Titanic episode of football there. I mean, it was really sad to watch. You just knew, like, the minute he wasn't coming back and Josh Johnson was in there, it's like, great.
Brock we just didn't have room on the door for Brock Purdy's elbow is really what it boiled down to.
Yeah. And knowing we couldn't do anything but run the ball was like, well, how hard is that going to be to defend? So it was.
And what was crazy was they were still tied at one point.
I know. Miraculously so. That just tells you everything you need to know, that we could have beat them. We could have beat Philadelphia without a doubt in my mind if Purdy was.
I agree.
Yeah.
This is a tough question because it really depends on who is the quarterback that we're talking about. I don't know if the 49ers can win this with these quarterbacks. And the reason I say that is because at this point, we know we know how far they can get with Brock Purdy. I feel comfortable saying that Brock Purdy could get them to the Super Bowl, possibly win it. I think the 49ers, if they had beaten Philadelphia, would have been able to stay right there with Kansas City. And the reason I said is because, well, Jimmy Garoppolo played right there with Kansas City the first time around. Their defense just couldn't get a stop in that game. So that's kind of why I feel like they'd be okay. When you get to Trey Lance, now you're having to take a leap of faith, right? Because you haven't seen it yet. I know Jess said that she includes him as one that could, and I'm not willing to say that Trey Lance could get them to win a Super Bowl at this point, just because we haven't seen him play anything close to that level. Now, like, we go into 2023 and he's starting and he's playing well, that's going to change. That could change, right? Because he can show us. He just hasn't had the opportunities to show us yet. So that's why I'm not sure on Lance. And it's the same thing with Darnold too. We haven't seen Darnold. We've seen more of Darnold, but again, he hasn't been good other than a short stretch last year. The potential is there. So when I look at it, it's, if Brock Purdy's healthy, then I think the 49ers, if he's healthy, I would say the 49ers can win the Super Bowl this year. If he's not healthy and you're having to rely on one of the other two, whether it's Lance or Darnold, then I say that's a much taller task. And so it's all going to be about how quickly Purdy can get back onto the field, I think, unless Lance or Darnold just blows it out starting in training camp and it's clear that they're playing at a high level.
Jack, I got my head handed to me for that take last night. If Purdy's healthy, it's his team, not Trey Lance's. Even if Trey starts well, it's Purdy's team. It's Purdy's job to lose. And people were like,
there's,
I don't know. I think, John Lynch has said it out loud. I'm like, I didn't make this up. When the senior leadership of the team are saying the words out loud, I'm listening to that. It's Brock Purdy's job to lose, not Trey Lance's to give to Purdy. So.
The one thing, though, about this team is it's not built like others. There's so much talent everywhere else.
Yeah.
That if the quarterback is just competent, like I look at the NFC right now, the only team that was better than the 49ers last year was Philadelphia. With what Philadelphia has lost so far this offseason, particularly the Hargraves, signing, the Ken Norton-esque swappy swap, right? I think that switches the balance of power a little bit. So as long as you've got a quarterback that's not Josh Johnson starting, I think you should feel very good about this team being the best in the NFC. Like right now, like if they were lining up to play games right at this moment, I feel like that's what they would be. Now you got a draft to go and you've got everything else, but when you look around the league, and when you looked at the NFC last year, it was really the Eagles and the 49ers were those top two teams. I don't really see anybody up there fighting with them in the NFC this year. I don't think it's going to be that. As long as they stay healthy and get it together, they should be fine. We're in a good shape. Really are.
Good problem to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Jess.
No, it definitely is a good problem to have. I mean, if we had, like Maddie said, like if we have a competent quarterback, not named Josh Johnson, I mean, we'll be fine just with the weapons we have around us, So I think we're in good shape.
Yeah, and I do agree with what you're saying, and Matt just said it a minute ago in terms of the roster, and y'all kind of said it. This is the best roster, I think, in the NFC. I think this roster is just as good, if not better, than it was last year. I think the defense is actually – the starting defense, I think, right now is better than what they took into Philadelphia in the NFC Championship game. I think the offense is all the same except for right tackle, but they've shown the ability to get it done with somebody other than Mike McGlinchey at right tackle. So I think they'll be okay on offense. My concern on the offensive side just goes back to the quarterback again. And you mentioned competent quarterback play, and unfortunately, we haven't seen the other guys do it yet. So that's the only reason that you have to just tap the brake a little bit on it, because we haven't seen Trey Lance play at that level yet. The best we've seen him play was Week 17 against Houston in a must-win game at Levi's. I get it was must-win, but that was a Houston Texans team that came into that game 30th in the NFL against the pass. I know that he played the best of all the rookie quarterbacks that faced Houston that season, but that's different than playing against the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC Championship game. It's different than playing against the Dallas Cowboys in the divisional round. So that's the only thing. And again, we'll have, this is one of those things where it's a fun conversation to have, but we're going to get a lot more clarity if these guys start to get on the field and we see them performing at a better level, and we see them start to do it. There's a difference between, Brock Purdy putting up 30 points a game and Trey Lance putting up around 14 to 13, right? And I know that Lance didn't have the full accompaniment of weapons, but he did have
or plays available.
Yeah, well, he also had that full group available. He had the best 49ers roster that you could put together on the field with them against Houston, and they scored 23 points. So that's just that's a 23 points, and that's not something that we saw from Brock Purdy in any of his games until other than against Seattle. But Seattle was a damn good team. They weren't a Houston Texans team. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, plus he was playing with a torn oblique or whatever the hell it was too, right? Like he probably shouldn't have even been playing in that Thursday nighter.
Yeah, but they still played well. Jess, what you're going to say? I'm sorry.
At the end of the day, the Houston Texans, they're still an NFL team. I mean, a lot of people discredit them for, it's the Texans, but yes, we do have a small sample size of Trey Lance. We do have more of a sample size of Brock Purdy, but at the end of the day, like I said, the Texans are still an NFL team. Trey Lance still went out there and he still performed at a high level. And, I'm really looking forward to seeing him in this offense with Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. I am with you on that. And I'm saying that I'm kind of playing the devil's advocate a little bit here because I understand it's an NFL team. I understand all that. If I was arguing for Trey Lance, I'd be saying exactly the same thing. Or if I was arguing if I was of the belief that the 49ers could do it with either of those two guys, which to be honest with you, I'm not that far on the other side of the fence. I do think that they could probably figure it out with how good their defense is and the running game that they'll have. And we'll just see. When I say that, when we're on this topic, I just say this: just tap the brakes. I'm not saying slam on the brakes. Don't pull the emergency brake. It's don't throw the parachute out. Just tap the brake a little bit. Just slow it down just a little bit. That's all I'm saying. I want to watch out because Jessica get mad at me if I keep talking about this. She's going to start telling me I'm full of beans.
It's weird that
No,
you're
not
talking
at
about the
all, not at all.
Texans because today has had all sorts of. There was a little Texans tie-in with the 49ers today, I guess.
See, you guys are awesome. This is one of the best groups that I've been in because you guys just keep leading. See, maybe you guys are just a lot smarter than me because you guys just keep leading right into all the other topics. Because you're right. That's been the other topic today has been Adam Peters possibly going to the Houston Texans. It dropped first thing this morning that I think it was Pro Football Talk put out that Caserio might be leaving the Houston Texans to go back to New England after the draft. And then if he does, Mike Silver then came out and said if that happens, then Houston would be going after Adam Peters to bring him in for the GM role. I'm gonna ask the group. We'll start off with Jess on this one as we go around the horn. Give me your thoughts on the 49ers potentially losing Adam Peters to the Texans.
I don't like it. I don't think it'll happen because of who reported it. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But yeah, I really don't see it happening.
I hope not. I mean, we've already had our fair share of turnover in our leadership. So I'm hoping that it's just background noise and people talking. So I would agree. Hopefully that's just scuttlebutt and he stays.
Go ahead, Maddie.
Well, the report didn't just come from Florio. He took that report from John McClain, who covered Houston for quite a few years, then retired. And I think he's still doing other stuff. But he was the one who'd mentioned that it was possible, or there had been rumblings that Caserio might go back to New England. And you have seen in the league before, which weird, like after you'd think if you're going to have people working on your team that you want working on your like you would get rid of them before the draft instead of just letting them do the draft and then letting them go. But you do see scouting departments and weird things happen after the draft and people getting let go. And we've talked about this on our show a lot, where the draft is another mile marker. It starts another era of free agency. It also seems to start another era of like personnel coaching free agency, where people kind of spin off and go do some other things. I wouldn't be shocked if D'Amico Ryans, who probably has got the Kyle Shanahan sort of, I would say, authority in Houston, right? I would think that would probably be one of the things that got him there, outside of the fact that he really wanted to resurrect the organization that he played for. If he wants Adam Peters to go in and be his GM, he's going to get him. You know, I remember us all sitting around in a big circle back in January because Jess and I were sitting in line, getting ready to go in for was it the Cowboys game or the Seahawks game? I think it was the Cowboys game.
It was the Cowboys game. Yep.
We're going in line for the Cowboys game, and in front of us is a large contingent of Houston Texans folks that were there for some reason. I can't imagine what, right? To see D'Amico Ryans and get caught up on things. Then you heard later, like at that point, I was like, oh yeah, they're totally all in on D'Amico Ryans, and they were, and they have been. And if he says that they want Adam, and we didn't want it, we were all like, no, we hate this. We hate this. This reeks of the same thing. Like, we want Adam Peters to be the guy that slides in when John Lynch finally decides, all right, I'm going to Amazon, right? Which hopefully happens after Super Bowl number 6 or 7 or 8, whenever he decides to do that. But you always kind of hope and pray that it's going to be Adam Peters that follows him over. There's just no guarantee of that at this point. And maybe he does decide to join D'Amico in Houston.
Yeah, losing Adam Peters would be a huge blow, I think, to the 49ers. I think he's been instrumental in how well they've done in the draft. I know that you see a lot of talk about how how well the 49ers have done in the later rounds, like round 5, 6, 7. You get into those, like you start getting into those later rounds, and that's when your personnel people start to kind of take over the decisions because of the amount of scouting. Those top ones are usually more coach and general manager. Then as you start getting into like rounds 4, 5, 6, 7, then you start to look at those are the scouting department. There's some input obviously from the coaching staff. They always have their hands in everything, but that's where you start to go build from there. And Adam Peters, I think, just does an excellent job. One of the things for me was post draft, he was having an interview and he was going through all the different players that they picked up, and he started talking about Brock Purdy, and he gave all the reasons to why they felt like Brock Purdy was the best quarterback in the draft, all the different things that he could do, yada, yada, yada. Well, then you watch Brock Purdy play this season, And every single thing that Adam Peters said about Brock Purdy showed up on the field when he actually got a chance to play. So if they lose, this is one of those guys I don't think they can lose. I think if the 49ers get into a situation where they, I'd rather have him be the general manager than lose him. And maybe you kick, John Lynch up to a different title just to let him still be around the organization because, let's face it, John Lynch does a good job. What he's best at is talking for the team. When it comes to the players and those types of things, I don't know if I would necessarily say that he's been great at, but he's a very good ambassador for the 49ers. That's the number one thing when it comes to John Lynch. So Adam Peters would be a big loss if that happens. And Maddie, you just mentioned something too that I wanted to hit on. You said that the draft and the end of the draft kind of kicks off a second free agency period, some of it with the players and also with the front office. And that's true too. That's a big piece of it because you go through the draft, you see who you got. And once you know you did or didn't fill this spot, then you know that you can go out and get that veteran guy that's been on the pile over here that you've been waiting to pull. So is there anybody, just to ask you guys, I didn't tee you up on this one, but just to kind of ask, is there anybody that's out there right now that you would say you'd want to see the 49ers go out and get in that second round of free agency? Or a position
Not yet in terms of like an individual, but what I'm seeing, it almost reminds me of the NBA buyout market, kind of gets to that point in July where everybody's signed. And now it's like, okay, well, some teams have decided to rebuild. So we're going to get some guys out on the market, right? So some guys that maybe are in the bargain bin that you wouldn't have been expecting to be in the bargain bin show up. I'm a firm believer that you add as many impact players on your defense as possible. And of course, in 1994, they added an impact player by the name of Deion Sanders in week 2. And it seemed to work after week 2, and it seemed to work out okay for him. I would love to see if some really named safety or named defensive back hits the market because they get cut somewhere. Maybe they jump over here for a season, right? So that they can get their market set and go back out and make some money. Would really like to see that just to add another top end talent there if there's something available, or linebacker wise, that would be great too. I would like to see that either way. Just one more named player on that defense, just for reinforcement, depth, and playmaking ability, really.
Yeah, you look at the Wayback Machine, and you have Fred Dean joining the 49ers in 81. I think it was like week 5 or 6. Right, that was a huge one. And then you go just last year.
Yeah, he loves Fred Dean, just so you know.
Loves Fred Dean. Fred Dean was
rung the bell.
The very first example of that, right? Like every year the 49ers are getting their junk kicked in by the Cowboys, and then finally they're like, all right, well, Fred Dean and the Chargers, who continue to not pay their players, you're going to notice the history of the Chargers throughout time. They decided to trade Fred Dean to the 49ers. Here comes Fred Dean, and he comes in week 6 against the Cowboys. He was only going to be used in pass rushing situations. I think he had 3 sacks, 4 sacks. I think they won 45-14 or something. That was the regular season game that year against the Cowboys before the catch game, and that was when everybody was like, "Whoa!" Because the year before, Dallas had beaten them 59-14, and Joe Montana was hiding behind people to not go into the game. It was that bad. So it was quite a turnaround during that time frame.
It was. I think they scored 45 or something like that. It was a big game. That's the game
could have
where
scored more. They called off the dogs at the end of the third quarter, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's the game as that Cowboy game in 81 during the regular season that you're talking about. Is if you go back in time, back in the old days of Monday Night Football, you had the Monday night highlights during halftime, and they did not show the highlights of the 49ers against the Cowboys. And so they were pissed off. So that's what spurred them on the rest of the year along the way, because they were being disrespected, they felt. So
the Cowboys are playing on Monday night. The Cowboys are playing on Monday Night Football the next week. So the conspiracy theory was that they didn't want to make the Cowboys look bad before their game. They didn't want to lower their ratings. That was the excuse that they were given, that I read in one of Bill Walsh's books, because they asked about, they're like, what happened? Well, we got the Cowboys next week. We can't show that highlight. Right.
Well, and even this past season, right? You have Tayshaun Gibson. You have Gibson not even on the team until, a month into training camp, not quite a month, but you know what I'm saying. Well, deep into training camp when they bring him in and he starts the whole season and leads the team in interceptions, and now he's coming back for year 2. So those things always happen. But Adam Peters, we don't want to see him leave the 49ers and go to the Houston Texans. One piece about this, though, that's interesting, and somebody mentioned in the comment section a little bit ago, was, hey, if Adam Peters ends up in Houston, what does that mean for Trey Lance? If Trey Lance, I got myself. It's funny because back in 2021, I had put out a tweet that said both John Lynch and Adam Peters are watching Davis Mills at his pro day today. Neither one of them showed up to watch Trey Lance. Interesting. And with all this talk about Adam Peters going to Houston today, some people out in Texas, I guess, caught on to it. And I saw that thing get retweeted about 8 times today. All of a sudden, it's getting all kinds of likes and retweets from people out that were Texans fans. So, hey, you got to be careful what you put out there. Sometimes it's going to come around when you're not expecting it. I think Ty's jumping in. He's jumping. He says, "Why is Trey Lance attached to Adam Peters?" I think people are saying that. Go ahead.
I was just say because they wanted any train that could possibly the Trey truthers, I guess, that just want Trey out of town are willing to get him on any train that has any sort of tie-in with the 49ers organization, right? Mm-hmm. Like if he stays here this year, I promise you're going to start hearing rumors that they should trade him to the Jets next year because Aaron Rodgers is leaving, right? Because of Robert Saleh or whatever ridiculousness you're going to do, right? You've already got the Tennessee thing that's always going to be out there because of Rand Carthon and the stupid Instagram thing, right?
Right, because he tweeted.
So, right,
and now
that's just you're going to have a Minnesota thing because he's from up there. Okay, that's always going to be there. Those are going to be the 3 teams. Then there'll be whatever rotating 4th one that they want to put in there. Like, that's just how it's always going to be. There's always going to be this Trey Lance trade rumor, and I think it's ridiculous. But here we are.
It's just not happening. It's not happening right now. We're not trading Trey Lance.
Yeah, it's Adam Peters, and then the other piece is that D'Amico Ryans is out there, and then also they have the other guy that was the not offensive coordinator, but helped out as the offensive coordinator now in Houston. So there's a lot of people in Houston that are attached to the 49ers, so they feel like that's another landing spot. Trey's going to go there. I'm on the record. I don't think Trey Lance gets traded, at least not during the draft. I think there's possibility that he gets traded once you get into the season if Sam Darnold plays really well and the rookie that they bring in plays really well and they have 3 guys they believe in. Then there's a possibility of Trey Lance being traded, but I don't see him getting traded during the draft. I know that seems to be the hot topic right now, or the hot comment, but I just don't see it happening. If he gets traded, it's going to be in the offseason. Then later on, like maybe the trade deadline or end of training camp, that time period makes more sense salary cap wise, makes more sense team wise, because you don't know what you've got right now because your starting quarterback can't throw a football, and you don't know if Sam Darnold can throw a football yet either, just for different reasons. So gotta kind of keep that one tied down. So thank you for the question, though, Ty. Too bad you're not on here to be able to chat with you live. All right, let me see. Why are you laughing? Back did I say that was funny? Huh? Or we got a funny person over here in the comments. I gotta read out.
It's the whole I'm having flashbacks from Nam from last night.
Oh, okay. From all the hey, that's one of the fun things.
Just playing devil's advocate on the whole thing, and it'll be what it'll be. Like it's gonna happen. We're gonna see what's gonna happen. So
yeah, Becca was constantly dodging comments last night. So
hey, if there's anybody that knows what it's like to put something out there and have people either first like completely miss the point of what you're saying or just get angry with it, it's me. I always have fun. I've had somebody yelling at me for like a month about me thinking that Brock Purdy might be back in time for week 1. So that's what it is. It's the fun time. Let's take a look at the team as a whole for a minute, and you look at what Las Vegas 49ers right now at 11.5 won the season. You look at the 49ers opponents are known. We don't know, and where they're playing, we don't know what the schedule looks like exactly yet, which will play some role in this. But over under 11.5 wins for the 49ers. Becca, go ahead and lead us off. Over or under?
Ooh, we always manage to start slow for some reason, and I think our little quarterback controversy might have us on the underside of that.
Real quick, I got to throw this back up here because I have my the comments are a little delayed, but I made the comment in there about a minute ago about how the starting quarterback can't throw the football, and Ty's chiming back in. He says the starting quarterback can throw a football. So I think that Ty is on the Trey Lance train.
He's on the Trey train,
wrong, and that's fine.
He definitely is.
He's the conductor of the Trey train, my friend. Like, he is all aboard. Let's go. Take the ticket, sit down, and then he is conducting you wherever you want to go on Trey Lance.
Love you, Ty.
That is correct.
As soon as that,
and I don't mean that in a bad way.
Ty,
it's just who he is.
As soon as that train starts to slow down, Ty's in the back, and he's throwing more coal onto that thing. How to get that thing going faster?
We had that conversation too last night. I'm like, what if he sputters out of the gate? Ooh, take cover.
Well, we'll see. So I'm sorry, Becca, I interrupted you. Did you say over or under?
I just said I think we're on the underside of that because I think with the quarterback situation, we and plus we always start slow. We just never can come out firing on all cylinders. I don't think I would love it if we did, but I think we're on the under.
Okay. So you say somewhere around 11 or fewer.
Yeah.
Okay. Maddie, what do you think?
I'm actually looking at the schedule right now, and I'm trying to count this up. I feel like I sadly believe that we're going to lose a division game next year. I don't think that streak can continue. I think we'll probably lose one of the games to Seattle. Maybe one of the games to Arizona just because for some reason Colt McCoy is Colt McCoy or whatever. So, Colt McCoy's us, and that's just what happens. But I look at the rest of the schedule, and I don't see anything crazy. Dallas and the Giants are going to be home games. So, okay. Baltimore's coming in. That's a home game. Cincinnati's coming in. That's a home game. Almost all of their difficult games this year, especially their out of division games, are home games. The only one that isn't is the Philadelphia game. And the Philadelphia game, they're going to have a chip on their shoulder so freaking big that I don't care if that game was played on the moon. The 49ers will win that game by 97 points. I look at that game against Philadelphia this year similar to the way I look at that Dallas-San Francisco regular season game from 1994 that played in Week 11, the 21-14 game. It's just going to be one of those measuring stick games where this team's going to be like, oh, hey, yeah, we're the people now. Remember that game last year? That was cute. You get to play without a quarterback. That's never happening again. Like, that's what I expect to happen. So I'm thinking 12. I think they're going to go over 12 wins. I think they will get off to a slow start. Okay. I figure, again, another 2-2 start because that's the modus operandi, but I still think 12 wins or more.
Hey, if they play the Eagles on the moon, then that'll help out Brock Purdy because he should be able to throw the ball even farther on the moon because less gravity and all that kind of sciencey stuff. Jess, what do you think? So we've got Becca saying under, we've got Maddie saying over, and you got to break the tie.
I am going over.
Okay.
For sure. I'm definitely going over because this team, I know we seem to always start slow, but this team has to break it somewhere, and they're going to do it this season, and we're going over.
I hope you're both right. Hey.
You're going with the over. Okay. And so that's, I happen to notice like what Matt was saying. You look at the 49ers home schedule. I saw it yesterday on the board and I was like, man, they got a lot of good games. You look at who's coming into Levi's next year, Dallas, the Giants, Ravens, Bengals. That's
Joe Burrow.
It's a really good tough home schedule. On the road, it's tough travel. That's the thing about their travel this year. They've got to travel all the way out to Philadelphia. They get the Giants at home, and who else is in the NFC East? Oh, the Washington team. They got to travel out to Washington. There's just a lot of East. The only thing that concerns me about their schedule on the road is the amount of travel because there's a lot of East Coast travel. Because not only are they traveling all the way to the East Coast to play Philadelphia and Washington, they're traveling all the way out there to play Pittsburgh. As well. So there's a lot of travel for them this year. A lot of long travel compared to last year where they spent basically the last 8 weeks of the season not leaving the Pacific time zone. So it's a lot bigger deal in terms of the travel this year. I still, if I was going to look at this, without really looking at who they're playing, I think I'd probably go with the over. I think 12 is probably the number that I'd land on. Somewhere in that 10 to 12 range. I always like to fudge a little bit, and since I'm the host, I can do that. But if I was going to say one or the other, I would say if I was betting, if I was in Vegas right now and I was going to throw down my $5, I'm putting the $5 on the over for the 49ers, because I do think they can get 12. In this, I am a big spender. That's me spending all of my YouTube.
Well, if that's what we're
monetization in one
betting, then I'm right there with you. The 10 to 12, where we're straddling the line, Jack, I can do that. $5 right there.
Yeah, absolutely. So there we go. We've got 3 of the 4 here say that we're going to be over. The Friars are going to win over 11.5 games, so 12 or more. So it's going to be fun. We talked about the quarterbacks. We talked a lot about the quarterbacks. That's going to be something. And Ty, don't worry. Trey Lance is going to have a chance to compete for that starting quarterback job. We'll find out if he's the guy. I said this. I might have even said it in your show. If not, I definitely said it in some other places. But if Trey Lance is the guy that everybody expects him to be, all the talk about competition and the frustration we've seen is going to go out the window, and he's going to win the job because of what we talked about earlier with his potential. So we'll see where it all comes together. But before I wrap it up, what do you guys got going on over on the East Coast Red and Gold podcast? What do you guys got going on down over there?
Well, Travis King coming on. So we're excited about that. He's going to come on, and we've had him on, earlier on, but he's going to come on, and we're going to obviously chat 49ers. And, we have quite a few guests lined up after that. So it'll be interesting. It'll be fun.
Absolutely. So there you go. So I want to say thanks to all 3 of you. I know it's you guys are all on the East Coast. That's why the East Coast Red and Gold. So, I know it's a lot later out there. So I appreciate y'all making the time to be able to join us tonight. And I had a fun time, and I hope you guys did too.
No, appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely, Jack.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, for sure. We'll definitely have to do it again. That's for sure. And I want to thank everybody who's watching. Do me a favor, hit the like button, get over to East Coast Red and Gold podcast, and make sure that you subscribe to their stuff as well. And before you leave here, also hit the subscribe button and the little bell notification so you know every time we go live or I put out some new stuff. So appreciate everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Take care and have a great time until we talk again. Talk to you soon.
Go Niners.
Go Niners.
Bang, bang.